Thank you for joining me today. We will start another part of this course talking about money, pricing, and estimate. I will talk about how to price your item or your activity. Just to remind you what we covered so far, we covered if you would like to construct this footing, for example, we learned how much concrete we need. We learned how to figure out how much steel reinforcement we need. We learned how much formwork we need to construct. We learned also how much soil we need to excavate. We learned all of this stuff, but looks like all what we covered so far is related to material. How much concrete, how much soil, how much steel rebar, even for the formwork, how much material of wood needed to construct your formwork. So everything related to material. Today, if we would like to go further and talk about price, we need to consider different factors. So the process of pricing an estimate can be divided into two stages. We already done with the stage number 1 before exam 1, which consists of preparing the quantity take-off and listing all take-off items. If we have columns, if we have brick walls, if we have anything else, we can list all of these items. Footing, we have concrete, we have steel rebars. Looks like some of you Taylor, maybe. Yeah. Steel rebars, formwork, soil excavation. This is for footing. We have another item for brick walls. I can figure out how many bricks, how much mortar I need to order. We have columns. I can say how much concrete, how much steel rebars, how much formwork. If you have slabs or floors, how much concrete, how much steel rebars, how much formwork. If we have what else? Anything else. So I can list everything in your construction, in your project. So the first stage consists of preparing the quantity take-off and listing them under each activity, like here, like this table. So I have the main title, for example, foundation, then I can list what you did to accomplish this activity. Then I will put here the quantity take-off, how much, and what is the unit I'm gonna use, because sometimes we are using volume, so cubic yard. Sometimes we are using a weight, ton. Sometimes we are using square feet. Does that make sense? So each item will be how much listed here, the quantity take off, and what is the unit. Then I will add a new column, which is the second stage. What is the unit price? What is the unit price? For example, what is the unit price for cubic yard of concrete? How much it will cost you? 1 cubic yard, just only one. Once you put here the price, for example, $100, I can multiply this unit price by the quantity take off to figure out the total price. That makes sense? So the second stage consists of pricing this sorted list of items, which is referred to the recap. So to be more organized, I will list everything I did for my building. Your building consists of many activities: excavation, foundation, brick walls, columns, floors, beams. We have many. So I will list all of them and what you did in the first stage, what is the quantity take off for each item, and what is the unit used. Then the second stage, I will list what is the unit price for each. Once you get this column and this column, just multiply this one by this one, you can get the total cost of your item. Keep in your mind, the estimate recap means the nature of the recap breakdown depends on the type of work involved in the project and the type of contract the contractor will be entering into with the owner. The recap will usually comprise the following trade breakdown. You have to consider every single activity in your project. I have to consider each activity in your project and what is the quantity take off that you did in stage number 1 and what is the used unit. Sometimes cubic yard, square feet, linear feet, whatever. Then I will put here the price. Your price is not simple as you know. No, your price will be more complicated. It's not only one column, just unit price and that's it. No, we have to consider many factors because we have cost for material, we have cost for labor, we have cost for equipment, and we have cost for the subcontract. We have different types of cost. It's not just a simple number and that's it. No. Keep in your mind, once the recap is prepared, the pricing can commence. In pricing a construction estimate, there are 5 price categories that need to be considered. It's not just a simple number and we are done. No, we have to consider what is the price for labors. Because if you are constructing a footing, keep in your mind, this footing will not be constructed without any help of labors, without any help of equipment. So we should consider, besides material. So material just for concrete, material just for formwork, material just for steel rebars. But we have hands that will construct this footing, which labors. And sometimes we have equipment, the truck that will transport concrete, the pump that will pour concrete. So we have equipment. So keep in your mind, the price is not just very simple. No, we have to consider labor, equipment, material, subcontractor, and the job overhead. Let me say this. If you are engineer and you are sitting in your office and drinking coffee, this cup of coffee should be considered in the cost estimate, in the price. it should be considered as a contractor to consider this cost on the project cost. That makes sense? The air condition in your office as engineer should be considered as extra cost. This is the overhead cost. That makes sense? So we have many. As engineer, you should have insurance. So the firm will pay insurance for you. Who will pay this insurance? It will be extra cost on the project. Does that make sense? So the life is not just simple. We have concrete, and the price of concrete as a material is $100 for cubic yard. That's it. No. Even for the labors, we should consider extra cost. These labors will eat, maybe. These labors will have a shelter. These labors will drink coffee. These labors will have insurance. So we have different categories we need to consider when you are pricing your item. That makes sense? So if you look here, this chart will give you labor, will give you 40% of the price, the cost. Equipment maybe 8%, material 43%. And keep in your mind, this firm should have a profit. So why we are working to get profit? So this profit is extra price, extra cost. Insurance, I have laborers, I have engineers, I have staff, I need to provide insurance for them. So keep in your mind, the price is not just a simple number and you can put it here and multiply it with the quantity take off to get the final cost. No, we have to consider many categories, many things when you are pricing in the second stage. Also, there is another factor that should be considered. The process is more complicated. I would like only to give you just general information what's going on. We have a contractor, the risk. Risk, yeah, because this process is variable. Today, the life is easy, the weather is good, everything looks good, but maybe tomorrow we can expect variable in the price, variable in the weather, variable in everything, like we did during the pandemic. Before pandemic is something, after pandemic it's completely different. Does that make sense? So we should consider risk. One factor that impacts all pricing categories is the contractor, the risk. Worrying, the contractor is worrying about the future. And keep in your mind to give you a reminder, we are talking about estimating. Estimating means we are going to construct something in the future. Maybe after 1 month, 2 months, 1 year. We will start the project after 1 year. So we are estimating based on the current condition of the market. So maybe there is a risk. Changes can happen. This change may be good for the contractor, may be bad. So we have to consider this factor. When a contractor is working under the terms, especially, this is the biggest risk on lump sum contract. There are 3 general reasons why actual cost may exceed the estimate. We can expect these 3 changes. What you did for quantity takeoff is wrong. Based on my calculation, I found, for example, I need to construct maybe 250 cubic yard of concrete. Unfortunately, after the actual construction, I found that I poured 300 cubic yard. That means you did something wrong. Your engineer or your estimator did something wrong at this point. But the actual concrete is 300. That means this extra cost, it's your responsibility as a contractor. So this can be overcome by considering risk. Also, the actual productivity does not meet the anticipated productivity. I did my estimation that, for example, the worker through will pour concrete maybe 100 cubic yard per day. Unfortunately, we have rainfall like today, and the rainfall will delay the pouring of concrete. That means the productivity of the worker crew will be changed. So this is extra cost because the worker need to get their money. That makes sense? So the actual productivity does not meet anticipated productivity. Subcontractors or material supplies fail to meet obligations. Like today, if you would like to provide cement in this wet weather, we cannot deliver cement because the water or the rainfall will destroy the bags of cement. Or there is a maintenance on the highway and the truck cannot drive to the site at that day. So we can expect a delay. All of these factors, something can happen in the future. So the contractor, should consider a type of risk. Does that make sense? So when a contractor is working under the terms of lump sum, especially for this one, there are three general reasons why actual cost may exceed the estimate quantity take off, productivity of the worker, equipment, whatever, and material subcontractor does not meet obligations. When you are pricing labor and equipment, because pricing material, it's more easy. Do you know how? If you have a concrete company, I can do it right now. If you have the contact information of concrete company, you can dial them and ask, hey guys, what is the price of 1 cubic yard of concrete as a material? They will answer, hey, the 1 cubic yard will cost you $200. Very simple, very simple. That's it. But how can I price the workers that will pour this concrete? How can I price the equipment that will be used to pour this concrete? That makes sense? So the material is the most easy one. But we need to talk a little bit about labors and equipment, how to price them. To price your labors and the equipment, we have to consider very important factor, which is called productivity rate. Because the productivity rate will decide or will determine how many days you need to work, how many labors you need to hire, how many equipment you need to rent. Does that make sense? Basically, we have two basic methods for pricing labors and equipment. The first one, we will do some examples on the first method. This method is using productivity rate. For example, I will say we have a concrete pump. This concrete pump will pour concrete, for example. This concrete pump can pour 50 cubic yard per hour. That means if you would like to pour 500 cubic yard of concrete, based on your quantity take off, I have a foundation or floor slab or whatever we need to pour 500 cubic yard of concrete. That means the number of hours needed to pour this concrete using this concrete pump will be 500 divided by 50. It will give you 10 hours. However, we are working 6 hours per day. This is the work hour per day. That means I need to rent this concrete pump for 2 days because I need 10 days work, 10 hours work. So I will rent this concrete pump 2 days. If this concrete pump rent equal $1,200 per day, that means this concrete pump cost or price will be $1,200 by 2 days. It will cost you $2,400. That makes sense? This is how to figure out the price of the equipment based on something called productivity rate. We can search, we can look for any contractor for equipment and ask him or her by phone, hey, I would like to rent a concrete pump. He can say, per day, I can rent it, for example, $1,000 or $1,200. Then your task is, what is the productivity rate of this equipment? How much total quantity take off? If you divide this one by this one, you can figure out what is the time needed to accomplish your task. This time and this productivity rate or price will give you the final cost of your equipment. So the first method to be used in pricing labor and equipment is the productivity rate. The same also for labors. If you would like to hire a labor crew, the labor crew will give you, hey, we can accomplish this task maybe 10 cubic yard per hour or 5 cubic yard per hour. Will give you a productivity rate. This productivity rate, besides the quantity takeoff, will give you what is the time required. Based on this time, I can price the total cost of the labors. So the first method using a productivity rate to convert the quantity takeoff into hours, labor hours, or equipment hours. What is the time needed? Equipment time. And then I will apply the wage rates and the equipment rates to the total hours to obtain the estimated labor and equipment prices for the project. Does that make sense? So in this method, I need two information. What is the productivity rate and what is the quantity takeoff? These two information will help you to figure out what is the total time, labor hour or labor time or equipment time. Then what is the rate for the labor? What is the rate of equipment? What is the price per day? Then I can figure out the total cost. The second method is unit price that are applied to listed takeoff quantity to calculate the total labor or equipment price for the work involved. Sometimes we have a concrete contractor. This contractor only to pour concrete, to finish the concrete activity. This contractor will tell you, hey, 1 cubic yard of concrete will cost you $500. As a general contractor, I don't care about the equipment, the labor, the material, because this subcontractor will give me the price for everything. This price including material of the concrete, equipment to pour concrete, labor, formwork, everything. This price is unit price for everything, including everything. So when you are working as a general contractor, I don't care about anything else. Just go ahead and use this number because this number includes everything. Does that make sense? There is a high risk factor in pricing labor and equipment. Keep it in your mind because each involves two components that are subject to variations that can be difficult to predict. The hourly wage rate of labor or hourly cost of equipment. As I mentioned, we are talking about estimation. That means it's a work that will be start maybe after 1 year. Maybe after 1 year, the price will be doubled. Does that make sense? So I remember if you are renting an apartment, for example, this is just a simple example. Maybe it will cost you 1,000 before pandemic. Maybe after pandemic, it will be 1,500. So something happened. We have variables. We have changes. Also, the productivity rate. I think today is a wet day. We have rainfall. The productivity for the labors, for the equipment will be very low because the ground is wet. The rainfall is heavy. So these two factors will make it difficult to predict the actual cost. So we should consider a risk. Let me do these two examples and I will continue on Tuesday. Actually, we have 3 examples. I will do them today and then I will discuss the rest on Tuesday. We would like, or we have an excavator having a capacity equal 3 cubic yard, and this excavator can work 8 hours per day. The single cycle of the operation consists of excavation, travel, two-way, and the transfer of excavated material. Cycle time for the excavator is 8 minutes. The daily excavation production rate, cubic yard per day, will be how much? I can explain it for you. We have ground surface here, and we need to excavate this ground surface. So I will rent an excavator. That makes sense? So this excavator, the capacity of this part can excavate in one cycle, yes, is 3 cubic yard. And this excavator need 8 minutes to excavate and return back to the truck. And put the soil in this truck and return back to do another excavation. This time needs 8 minutes. Does that make sense? So how much soil this excavator can excavate in cubic yard per day? Very easy. Very easy. Anybody can tell me how many cycles this excavator can do per day? I can do it. I can say the number of cycles per day equal. This excavator can work 8 hours per day. So we have 8 hours, means 8 times 60 will be minutes. This is the total time per day this excavator can work. This excavator can do one cycle every 8 minutes. So if you divided the total time, the total work time by the time for one cycle, I can tell you how many cycles per day. 8 times 60 divide 8 will give you 60 cycles. Each cycle can excavate 3 cubic yards. So the productivity of this excavator cubic yard per day will equal 3 cubic yard for one cycle time 60 cycle per day. The total is 180 cubic yard per day. So this excavator can excavate 180 cubic yard per day. This example, just a simple example how to calculate the productivity rate of an equipment. So this is a good example that sometimes as a site engineer or estimator, you need to decide what is the size of your excavator, for example, to excavate your foundation. Do you think I'm gonna use very big excavator or just medium excavator or a small excavator? Because each will have a different price. So you need to do some math. What is the capacity of each? The big excavator will have a very big spoon to excavate in one time. The medium will have a medium size. The smallest one will have a smallest one to excavate. This is the capacity. And also, you need to understand you are excavating soil here. And what is the nearest point your truck can stand? Because your excavator will travel from the position of excavation to the truck to put the soil, the excavated soil. So what is the time to excavate and to go to the truck and return back? This time, beside the capacity of the spoon of the excavator, and what is the time, the workday time, 8 hours, 6 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours, whatever, I can find out the productivity rate of this excavator. Does that make sense? So these factors will help you to take a decision. What is the size of your excavator? Maybe how many trucks, because I don't like this excavator to wait for the trucks to come back after evacuated from soil. Does that make sense? Second example, we talked about this example before, but we will take it with a different point of view. We would like to excavate we would like to construct a grid beam. This grid beam with dimensions 3 feet wide, 2 feet depth will be poured around the perimeter of this area of land. So the perimeter of this area of land will be, I have this length 320, 80, I have 400 feet, 2 times. This one is 800 feet. This one, and this one, 800 feet, 400 feet. Plus, I have this one 130, and the 70, it's 200 feet. Repeated 2 times. This one, and this one, and this one. Besides, we have this length and this length, 50 times 2. I think I considered every single side of this perimeter. So the total perimeter of this area of land will be 800 plus 400 plus 100. equal 1,300 feet. I would like to excavate the soil with a slope 1:1 to construct this grade beam. So I would like to excavate this cross-section area. And this area will be go through the perimeter of this area of land, which is 1,300 feet. So the total volume of excavation will equal this top width equal 3 feet plus 2 plus 2. If you remember, we covered this before. This height is 2, this length will be 2 because your slope 1:1. This height is 2, this length will be 2 because the slope is 1:1. So the area of this excavation will be 3 feet plus 7 feet divide 2 times the distance in between 2 feet. This area of excavation multiplied by 1,300 total perimeter around this area will give you the total volume of soil that needed to be excavated. How much? $13,000 cubic feet. If you divided it by 27, it will be 481.5 cubic yard. That makes sense? This is the total quantity takeoff. But we are not looking to figure out the quantity takeoff. We are given something different. The excavation will be accomplished by a track hoe having a productivity rate of 9 cubic yard per hour. The equipment that I'm gonna use can excavate 9 cubic yard per hour. Assume we have 8-hour work day. Per day, we are going to work 8 hours, 8 to 4. How many number of days needed to complete this excavation? It's very easy. Once you get that total quantity take off, I can say number of hours will equal the total quantity take off 481.5. This is in cubic yard divided by the productivity rate, which is 9 cubic yard per hour. I can tell you how many hours needed to accomplish this task. 60.2 hours. So the first example helped you to figure out what is the productivity rate for equipment. The first example explains how to figure out the productivity rate of the equipment. The second example, this productivity rate is ready for you. I need to figure out what is the total days needed to accomplish this excavation. That makes sense? So I need 60.2 hours. So the number of days, since we are working 8 days per hour only, 60.2 divided by 8 hours per day, I can tell you I need 7.5 days. I think we will rent this equipment for 8 days to accomplish this task. That makes sense? So this example, how many days needed to complete this task, which is excavation, I need 8 days. That means the excavator, the track hoe, will be rented for 8 days. So I will call the contractor for equipment. He will say, for example, the rent of this equipment equal maybe $500 per day. I need this equipment for 8 days, so the total cost of the equipment will be $500 times 8 days will give you, I think, $4,000 just for equipment. Does that make sense?